On this edition of the Boomer Music Experience with Randy Halmo, we're going to talk about radio, folks. We're going to look at how radio has affected us in our lives and look at the local scene and where it all started and what developed out of it. Randy, when we talked about doing this idea, I got to tell you, it brought back so many memories for me in a positive light because for some reason, I started remembering my grandmothers. My one grandmother always listened to country and western. I think it was probably a Tilsonburg station back in that day that she listened to. And my other grandmother always listened to CFRB out of Toronto, and she was a big Wally Crowder.
CFRB.
Yeah, big Wally Crowder guy, girl. She always enjoyed his opinions and liked his shows. And I was like, how do I remember all that when I was like 8, 10, 12 years old? But it's so vivid to me. And I thought, even just remembering the call letters, right? How, like you're conditioned almost, but it was such an important part of our lives. Radio affected us for you and I growing up in every aspect of what we were doing. It was part of our fabric of our community, was it not?
So true, Dave. So true. Oh, yeah. Big time.
So tell me about the local. Where did it all begin locally in Halmo, Norfolk? Well, basically, I guess Simcoe, really.
The beginnings of radio in Simcoe, basically, I believe I'm correct in this, was May of 1957. And there was a nice couple, Ted and Betty Fielder.
Okay.
They were the owners of radio station CFRS 1560. It was the first radio station in Simcoe, as I mentioned earlier, and their broadcast time was roughly 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Oh,
and 12 hours.
Know that.
They had a total wattage of 10,000 watts. Well, back in that day, that was a lot. 10,000 watts. Today,
so
it's
quick question:
quite a bit more than that.
When they went off the air, when they came on the air in the morning, was it with the national anthem or was it just okay? See you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, they went off the air at 7 p.m. With the national anthem.
Interesting.
Which was good. And I just want to review some of the announcers that I knew during that time frame in the early days of CFRS 1560. The late Bob Watmow, he was a fantastic producer at CFRS. Norm Guilfoyle, he had a great radio show. The late Doug Cameron got his start at CFRS. He later, for many years, was extremely successful working for radio station CHML in Hamilton, as was Dave Smith. Dave Smith, he got his start at CFRS, and he had a wonderful career at CKOC Hits 1150 in Hamilton. So, as you can see, basically, the announcers, they're getting their kind of baptism with the smaller stations, and then as they move on and up to the bigger stations and having wonderful careers in radio. Now,
with that, I'm just going to bug you for a minute because I got so many questions. With the radio station at that time, was there that when it started, was it sort of driven by community? Did it have that community feel?
Definitely, yeah. And Ted and Betty Fielder, they really gave it the community feel right from the get-go. Ted and Betty Fielder. And their morning show was really fantastic. In fact, they were years ahead of their time because you listen to radio today, you have a male-female announcer, and they call it the wake-up call. Play, listen, and win.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Were they both doing the show then? The husband and wife?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you're right. They were way ahead of the curve.
And being owners, plus they had the morning radio show. And it was very interesting because they really touched on fragments here and there of what was going on in Simcoe, who to get in contact with. Of course, like the Norfolk County Fair.
Yeah.
For years, they had a booth there, CFRS, and Ted and Betty Fielder show. right there, live on location. Of course, back then, they didn't have these cordless mics.
No,
They had corded mics, and there was no, like, it was all live radio. If you made a mistake or
mistake.
used the wrong word, everybody heard it. And that was the excitement of radio. Of course, most of the announcers very professional.
Did they do
And
news? Did they do the news too? Like, was it sort of the same format it is today? Like, would they do their morning show, but then they'd have the news and the weather?
yeah,
And
the format is basically the same as it was back then in the late 50s, early 60s. You had the local news, then it was local news. Then, right after the local news, they'd have an update on the weather forecast. And then um, to finish it off, they would feature one event, one major event happening that week somewhere in Simcoe.
oh, cool.
And I want to really stress the fact it was local news and really,
You were
really good. And like Bob Watmow, the producer there at CFRS, he was phenomenal. Great producer. I'll tell you, many good stories about Bob. And he was the gentleman who called me. And I want to share this with the audience very briefly. Um, they had back then in the late 50s, early 60s, the Teen High Club. And what they did, you submitted your name, and each week they drew a name. And if your name got called, you would come into the radio station and have a short session of a radio show with whoever was on, be it the radio announcer for that time frame or whatever. And Bob Watmow, he set the whole program up, the Teen High Club. Well, I was scheduled to have my Teen High Club guest, as they called it, November 16th, 1963. But wait a minute, something came up at the last minute. I got a nice courtesy call from Mr. Bob Watmow, and he said, Randy, we're going to have to throw this ahead to November 22nd, 1963. Would you be available? I said, oh, absolutely. What time, Mr. Watmow? 1 o'clock, November 22nd, 1963 was my introduction into live radio. And of course, we all know that fateful day in Dallas, Texas, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, it was really, really something.
so that was your first time on the radio, was that
Very
day?
first time on the radio. Yeah.
Really?
November 22nd, 1963 at 1 o'clock.
Wow. So what did that if you don't mind me, I got to ask, what was the impact on you at that time? I mean, just both hearing that news and then also being on the radio.
It was very emotional.
Yeah.
Even to this day, I have flashbacks.
Yeah. Do you think that had any influence? I mean, that was the center of the universe at that time, and thank goodness we had local radio and TV at that time too, to sort of bring the news to the folks. But at the same time, that impact was felt globally on that day. And there you are doing your first really radio show, and which now it's turned into a lifetime of this. Does it feel there's something there that you wanted to carry on from that moment, like with your? I mean, the one thing I love about you is when I've seen you DJ, you're fun, you enjoy the moment, you're in it, and I think that moment back then in 1963 encapsulate you enough to understand what the value of radio was.
Absolutely, Dave. It was quite an introduction into radio. But we had we did a 5-minute show, and basically Norm asked me, he said, well, what was the feeling in the classroom when they had heard? Well, I was in grade 9 that year, and Chris Lee was our homeroom teacher, and he had said there were finished exams, and now that's the good news, now the bad news. And then he told us what was going on in Dallas. And it was just the whole classroom just went into horrendous shockwaves. Couldn't believe it. No, this can't be true. Oh, yes. And so anyway, yeah, that was an introduction. I just wanted to share with our audience too, Dave. When you listen to radio, whoever the announcer is, he or she, or couples duets now with the early morning shows, the AM show and all this, the art of a good professional radio broadcaster is that you can actually hear the smile in their voice. Very important.
I love that.
And
the authenticity comes through right on radio.
Oh, big time.
Like if you're enjoying
that shows through quite significantly.
Before the 1963 event, you were listening, obviously, I can tell you were listening to the radio. Was there an early indication that was a field you might want to get into before the event in 63?
Yes, there was, Dave. Yeah, definitely. I thought, oh, this is interesting.
What pulled you towards it?
I would love to be on radio. Wow.
But you've got the face of a movie star. Why would you want to be on radio? I should be the radio guy, not you. But what did talk about that? I mean, I was sort of curious too I was trying to remember back to the first songs I heard on the radio. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, I can't really go too far back and think about it. But I do remember at my grandmother listened to country western. I remember hearing Elvis and I remember hearing Glenn Campbell. I don't know why those two stuck with me.
Oh yeah, Glenn Campbell. Yeah,
right. But those were those. I don't know. Something in that music was like, well, what's that all about, right? And I mean, obviously with Elvis, that was huge, and the Glenn Campbell thing, obviously very big. But those two kind of caught my ear, And at that point, I was like, oh, what is this cool, little box that I get music from? As a kid, you're like amazed with radios. You were. I mean, comparative to today's society, right? I mean, the other part that I think, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, because we're going down a rabbit hole now. You got me going. I think that when radio is such a piece of culture, from you and I growing up, and many folks, don't get me wrong, but I remember we were talking off air about listening to like a countdown, and you were so invested in it. But you learned to be patient and wait for the next song. You enjoyed the song while it was on. Then you had to be, it's like, okay, it wasn't instant gratification. It was, no, you're going to hear all 10 because you don't know what the number one is or the top 20 or whatever it was that week. But I just found that maybe that's where we sort of, maybe that's where you and I are able to step back in society and go, wait a minute, right? Because we had to have those patients early on in our lives. And the radio was just an example of that, of how you would, sit back and listen and enjoy those moments. Maybe take it in, right, for what it was. And do you feel that way or no?
Oh, absolutely, Dave. Every bit. It's radio, even to this day, is very exciting. The formats have changed because of the big conglomerates buying up smaller radio stations. But for example, after CF, I was going to say CFRB in Toronto, Wally Crowder, Betty Kennedy, Gordon Sinclair, Mr. Davis. Anyway, it was interesting to note that during the years of CFRS 50 and 60, it was a standing joke. And inside the guys working radio and also the people hearing, CFRS, the meaning of CFRS, can't find the radio station. I couldn't believe it.
No way.
Yeah. And Norm Guilfoyle, we were talking on the phone one day, and he said, you know what the meaning of CFRS? No, can't find the radio station. Did we have a ball with that one? Oh, God. Anyway.
That's interesting, eh?
It was priceless. But
No,
moving on now, in the late 60s, when I was at the University of Guelph, I came on board with Radio Griffin. And there I did a weekly show. It was Monday nights, 1 hour show. And my producer was Max Byard. And like the late Bob Watmow, he was a terrific producer. And so I had the hour show. And he later went on to broadcast with CKPC in Brantford. So very successful radio career also. But with that, I brought in all of my music that I wanted to do for the show. I studied 6 hours, music, prompts, the whole works to put my show together for 1 hour on the air Radio Griffin.
1 hour.
But I supplied all my own 45s.
Yeah.
And Max had the turntables there, boom, boom, boom. And I supplied all of my own script. And then occasionally off air, when the song was playing, if I said something or did something incorrectly, he would very cautiously say, "Oh, well, maybe you could do this a little better next time," or something. And he always gave me great tips. So, but yeah, so that's Radio Griffin.
So you're a university student at this time, and you're starting to dabble, eh?
Yeah, and but it was CJOY in Guelph. That was the radio station that we did our Radio Griffin shows at. And it was downtown Guelph. Great little radio station. And I really enjoyed my years there with Radio Griffin.
I got to ask, too, because and I'm just curious if you did you have a on-air persona name? Or were you Randy Halmo?
Oh, sorry, Dave.
Did you have an on-air persona name? Or were you always just Randy Halmo? Like, was it,
Oh, yeah. Just had my regular
Griffin
name.
Randy or something, right? Did you have any? Because that was the other thing about when you're a kid growing up. I mean, Wolfman Jack, right? Probably the most famous, right?
Yeah.
But you would hear, like on Q, it'd be Scruff Connors. On the one on Erie, it'd be the guy's, handle was Sandy Beach, right? You were just like
Dave Mickey. Yeah.
But all these, they actually created personas for the radio, didn't they?
That's right. Yeah, they certainly did. And by doing that, it was easier to remember. You could put, and it's hard in radio to put a face to the voice. It's extremely hard. But when you have a persona like that, that kind of helps. That's interesting.
So you never considered it, eh? You never had that persona name, eh? Is that what you're telling me? Come on, you must have thought about it.
So I did a bit, but the radio people at the different radio stations that I went into, even to do my voiceovers in the family business, I did 30-second and 60-second commercials. Even with the voiceovers and that, even today, I do my own voiceovers, supply my own music, and do my own script.
All right, so I think we're going to take a minute and give Randy a name. So we'll do it like the joke is with strippers' names. What's your first pet and the first street you lived on? What is it, Randy?
That would have been Bellevue Avenue.
Yeah.
Oh no, Chapel Street here in Simcoe.
Okay. And what was your first pet's name?
First pet's name was Callie.
Callie?
Callie
so
cat.
Callie, you would have been Callie Chapel. That's would have been.
There we go. It's like CCR.
Yep. There you go. You know what? And
God.
See, mine would have been Sandy St. George. That's not bad, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. But it's
right.
Yeah. So we were just trying to have some fun, folks, to give Randy a DJ name so that he could.
Yeah, that's great. CC. Callie and Chapel. Callie, Chapel, Randy.
So the other piece I want to talk about real quick is the personalities. When we're talking about the radio, the disc jockey personalities, and one of the things I sort of looked at when I was talking about my grandparents and listening to the radio and other friends is sometimes that seems to fit their personality. You know what I mean? Like my one grandmother always listened to CFRB and wanted to hear, it was more lounge music, it was more opinions, it was more news focused.
Mm-hmm.
And my other grandmother wanted to hear country, and she was more country, more laid back, more,
Mm-hmm.
that way.
Right on.
And then I thought about, because I would always, growing up, one of the things that I would always listen to was Tom and Jerry baseball games,
Mm-hmm.
right? For the Blue
Yeah.
Jays and things like that. And I was like, that's kind of who I am right now. Like I still would prefer to hear, and may he rest in peace, Vin Scully, call a game than anybody, because
Right on.
and it's what you said about the smile. He painted that picture for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? With just listening. And your imagination was allowed to run wild and sort of have a visual in your own mind of what that was going on in that ball game. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's sometimes that's another aspect that I think we're losing, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Absolutely. We, the late 60s really got me more involved in radio. The next segment we want to take a look at, the mid 70s to mid 80s. That's when the radio station CHNR.
Yeah.
And that was located, the studios were located just on the left side there, that infamous bridge that you
Yes.
go under, which is now gone.
Gone, yeah.
Going up Norfolk Street North, right across from Freeman Tire Service.
Yeah, right across.
So,
right across the road. That building's gone too now, isn't it? Where the radio station used to be.
And the new owner of CHNR was Clark Drennan. And you'll note, I think if you can see these two coffee mugs here,
Yep.
they have the radio station call letters. Then they have the dial number. Well, in this case, Clark Drennan was the owner of CHNR, and he also continued when they moved to Parkside Drive. Yeah, Parkside Drive. So CD 98.9 stands for, they're using Clark Drennan 98.9 FM.
I didn't know
the
that
same
either.
with oldies, and before oldies came along, it was CD 106.7 FM,
right?
And that was more of a country music genre. And then that gradually came into light soft rock. But CD stands for the late Clark Drennan. And what a tribute and legacy to Clark.
Why do, and yes, respectfully, yeah. But I got to ask, why do they keep switching the names?
Good question.
And they'll move up and down the dial, won't they, a little bit?
Yeah. CHNR, I think that was 800.
1600?
Or, sorry, 1600. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Just doubled 800.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1600. And then from there on Parkside Drive, 98.9 and Oldies 99.7, which is where they're at today. But yeah, it's interesting when you look at call letters on a radio station and then the actual radio dial right beside it, right next door. And that is the identification of all radio stations anywhere across Canada. I'm not too sure about the States, but right across Canada, we all have the letter format, then the number format. And it's really easy. And that you commit that to memory, you can listen to a lot of different radio stations and different genres.
What do you think, too, since you're onto that, is why are the call letters embedded in our brains? Because we heard them so much as kids?
I think so, Dave. A lot of the radio stations will emphasize, CFRS 1560.
Yeah.
Or you're listening to CFRS 1560. And now we'll go to the latest news at the top of the hour. The announcers will always reinforce that, he or she, in our brain cells, the call letters and the radio dial number. And it's like second nature, like brushing your teeth.
Right.
And that's how it works. It's that effective.
Until you switch radio stations, then you got to remember the new call letters. So tell me about this.
Yes.
What's this picture in front of me here I'm seeing? Who's the young fella? I don't recognize him.
Oh, no, either do I. I'm just trying to think of his name. There's Matt LeBlanc, but Matt, he's more news.
Yeah.
He's the news director.
Yeah, Matt's good. Yeah, I know Matt.
And speaking of that too, um, I also, when I did my shows when it was CD 98, and I'm going back a bit, I had uh, Jerry Hamill and
Yeah.
Adam Mayer help me. I had a midnight show, and it ran from 12 midnight, or it was 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. in the morning.
You didn't do it live,
And it
though,
was
did you? You
called,
recorded it, didn't you?
yeah, and it was called Romantic Interludes.
Ooh.
And I researched my own music. I did my own script with it. But with high tech back then, I'm talking now, we're going into the mid to late 1989 to about 1995 and around that time frame.
Okay.
Through high tech, as long as Adam was available or Jerry was available, I could go in and record the show.
Yeah.
They would record it for me on tape.
And away you go. You weren't. Yeah, I can't even imagine doing a live show at midnight every.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
And
was yours once a week? Was it a once a week show, or was it?
It was. Let's see now. I did it. Let's see. Boy, my memory's getting. It was once a week.
Yeah.
And it was, as I mentioned, 12 midnight to 6 a.m. And then from 6 a.m. until I think 11, Kate McCallum was on with, and she shared the duties there with Adam Mayer also.
Yeah, Adam and Jerry.
And she's great. Kate's, she's she's been down east now, I think, for about 20 years. She's good gal, good radio voice.
I think she's out west.
Very
I think
authoritative.
She's BC bound.
And great humor on the radio too.
Yeah, she's got a wicked sense of humor. She does, for sure. When you're doing the late night show, obviously the persona was much different than we're doing right now, right? Like you said, you'd script your own shows. Like, was it the deep voice Randy Halmo? Hello, it's Randy Halmo with Late Night, where you're playing all the soft, romantic stuff for you. What was going on?
Kind of late night radio, and it's funny because the next morning I'd be kind of walking down, going into the bank, and a couple of gals passed me and said, "God, it's really nice waking up to you in the morning." And I guess my face turned redder than a tomato. And and the gals, they've been walking down. Oh my God, you are so nice to wake up to in the morning. I really enjoy waking up to you.
Probably a few husbands that didn't care for Randy Halmo, that's for sure, ladies.
Yeah. But anyway, I did have, through that show, Romantic Interludes. What it was, Dave, it was kind of a takeoff. It wasn't plagiarized, but it was my own material. It was kind of a takeoff between the John Tesh radio show on love themes, and also Jackson out in the west coast there, Vancouver. He had a radio show, Don Jackson, called Don Jackson Here and Now, and then he changed the title on that. But both great radio shows on the subject of love, romance, and love relationships. And that's what it was all about. And so,
Did you really enjoy that? Did you have a lot of fun doing that?
Oh, yeah, that was fantastic. That was a lot of fun doing that. And as I say, I got a lot of feedback from the gals. But good topics, but the music blended in well with the commentary too. So a lot of preparation, a lot of study.
I was just going to ask you that. Is that what you find is the basis for a good show, is the preparation, the study, and just adding a little bit of your personality to it?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. To project your personality into a show, especially dealing with love relationships, romance, this type of thing, really a must to make that show go.
Right.
Very, very, very true. Yeah.
That's cool.
But even in today's world, I do quite a number of my own spots at CD 98.9 and Oldies 99.7. For example, the Christmas ads, the New Year's Eve ads, Valentine's, St. Patty's, Harvest Dance, Halloween, you name it.
Yeah, you're still there.
They're
doing
usually 30 to 60-second scripts, which I script myself, and I bring my own music. And what they can do at the station, I'm still a CD DJ. I bring my CDs, and through, of course, high tech, they can just program that right into basically streaming the music for that one CD, one song, and it's phenomenal. So with the preparation there, 30-second to 60-second spots, it takes me just to do a 30-second. I spend 2 hours on it.
Wow.
Just to do a 30-second,
just
what
to
they
make sure you
call
get it
voiceover
right.
for Classy FM.
So looking at today's world, you and I have been doing this. Boy, how long have we been doing this? 5-6 years, our podcast? I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think of how it's all evolved? Like, I mean, you and I can sit here and talk about literally anything we want now. Like, it's such a change for you to see over the years since 1963. It must be amazing because now you're like, I can say what I want. But you still know. What I like about you is you know the context, what you're going to say it, and you know the parameters to say it in. Where a lot of people don't have those filters anymore, especially me. But you still know how to do that and to intertwine it in so it's entertaining and people can sort of see your perspective, but also enjoy the content that we provide. It must, for you, it must be amazing to see those changes.
Oh yeah, it is, Dave. And once again, I thank you for having me on board. I really enjoy our podcast, the different themes, the different topics, and I'm sure our listeners are
for sure.
they enjoy it quite a bit too, with the number of hits we're getting.
And it's kind of interesting because we can put your podcast basically anywhere that's relative to music, which I think is kind of cool because if there's, there's some of the sites we use are like an oldies music sites that we put these podcasts on, and it's amazing that people they want to hear that updated version of where this person might be, or relive that story about a certain artist that you and I have a discussion about. And I think that's kind of, again, it goes back to that radio influence from all those years ago. That's probably why podcasts have been so successful, because there's still this huge generation that craves that information that we can do and talk about we can talk about the Beatles. We can talk about 1963 and the beginnings of your radio career. I think that's kind of cool that we're able to do all that. I got to ask, so right in front of you, there's a picture and an article. Is that you, like a young Randy Halmo? I got to ask.
Yeah, that is. This was an award I received from the Canadian Professional Disc Jockeys Association. I was interviewed by the girl that did the article, and it's quite well done, from radio jock to DJ, and in it kind of in a kind of a time capsule, it gives my very beginnings right up to current radio and what I'm doing in radio right now, which is right now a lot of voiceovers for my professional DJ service, Classy FM.
Did you ever think, I got a couple more questions for you. Did you ever think, like I just thought about this, like in 1963, you've been in some form of the radio for 62 years.
That's right.
It's amazing. Like, Randy, I'm only 61.
Well,
we're going
I'm
way
getting
back.
up there in age. I don't get around too much anymore.
Yeah, I'm moving like Jagger. Yes.
still got the moves. What in your career, in this long storied career that you've had in radio and in DJing, can you talk about? I mean, we talked about 1963. 1967 probably stands out, right? 9/11 probably stands out. Like, if you were, those moments is when the radio brings brings reality home to us, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly does, Dave. And especially with Canada's centennial, 1967, there were so many events going on right across Canada. And the radio stations were really pumped with what they call live on location interviews. And that is the heart of broadcast radio, live on location, because it gets to the heart of local news. They're interviewing local people with various topics, what's going on right now, or what will happen very shortly in that particular town. And live on location says it best when you're talking local.
And I got one more thing I want to add too, because and I'm not trying to. You are my second favorite, okay, local radio announcer. My number one, and I'm sorry, I have to go there because he
It's
would
okay.
live on the billboard with me for I think the first 2 or 3 years. Is Steve Sabrin? Remember Steve? Just a great guy who was at, well, I guess it was probably CD 98.9 then, because I'm pretty sure when we would live on the billboard and raise money for the NYCA, and Steve, who was the news guy at the radio station, would always come up there and live with me we would literally live up there for a week, and we became really, really good friends. And I learned so much from him about the radio and how to act on it, how to be, and we were doing those live remotes from the billboard on the corner of 3 and 24 in Simcoe, and we had so much fun. But Steve was just one of those characters too that kind of, and he's still in the business, obviously, not locally, but he's still doing it, and he's just one of those great guys that I always have time for Steve Sabrin.
Yep.
And what he does, and just those. So I'm sorry, Randy, I'm just going to apologize now. You're number 2. I hope you can live with that.
No, that's fine. No, that's great. Yeah.
But
no worries whatsoever, Dave. No worries. No.
In the 60 years that you've been doing this, then, is there any, can you talk to maybe one of the best moments you had? Can you sort of give people the feel? Because I know you as a DJ, when you're out doing dances and all that, you're into it. You have those moments. Was there that moment on the radio where it just all came together and it was just, you was just enjoying that moment, or somebody said something? Was there any moments like that you can reflect on?
Yeah, I would say, Dave, when I had my radio show, Romantic Interludes, tremendous amount of preparation for those shows, but well worth it. And I got a tremendously large response from the female generation. But,
Yeah, those.
To produce a show like that, it takes a lot of background research. You've got to know your music for sure, and when to play it when you're discussing a particular part or portion of love, romance, or relationships. And I'm not an expert in that field by no means. But what I did do, I made it very interesting and appealing to my listening audience.
Yep. That's critical, isn't it? Especially, at that late at night too, there's people probably going through lots of different things, and what they really need, and this is another aspect of radio, a soothing voice, right? That they can relate to, that understands them, or, they feel a connection. And that's, like you brought up earlier, feeling that connection to that DJ. Maybe you don't know the face, but you know the voice, and it's always there, and it's soothing for you. I think that's
Right
probably,
on. Yeah.
we've probably lost some of that. Where do you see radio going from here? Like we talked about, it's a lot of corporate now. I mean, obviously we're doing a podcast. There's tons of podcasts out there, but is there another step that you see in this genre?
Well, right now we're also getting into the streaming is huge.
Yeah, streaming is huge.
Right now, that is that's setting a new path, a new journey. There's so much happening and going on in media with radio right now. Wow. It's anybody's guess, even 3 or 4 years down the road, where radio will be. Radio will always have a presence, but in what form, don't know.
Me either.
Don't know.
And it's funny because now we can download any music we want to hear. It's what we talked about earlier. You can have it just like that. Whereas, growing up, you you had to hear the song, you had to like the song, you had to go buy the record, the album, the 45, whatever it was, right?
Yep.
You were committed to it, right? You didn't just, now I could download 1,000 songs and, you know what I mean? I might not
Sure.
like
Oh, yeah.
900 of them, but I mean, I think that's where I think there was more of a relationship to music back then, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it makes every bit of sense, Dave. Yeah. Well put. Well said. Yes.
I could go on
Absolutely.
forever because I just think this is such an interesting topic, but we're almost out of time here. Um, you looking back, is there anything? I mean, I don't think there's anything you would have changed, is there? Because you got to do some pretty amazing stuff on the radio.
One thing I didn't mention, I'd like to close with, in the year 2003, we're now talking golf, not on the Golf Channel, but right here on our podcast. I saw Mike Weir. He was putting on the putting green along with his caddy and Brendan Little. And Brendan Little was at one of the weddings that my cousin Chris Murray had attended, and they were chatting up a storm. And so I yelled over to Brendan Little. I said, "Brendan Little, Chris Murray says hello." He turned around, he kind of looked at me. That got his attention. It's just how I said it. Oh, okay. He starts walking towards me. Then Mike Weir stops on the practice putting green. Weirsy stops, and so he starts coming. I thought, oh my God. Got back to the radio station. Jerry, I've got Mike Weir coming over. Just give me 20 seconds. I want to ask him one question. 20 seconds. Get me on the air. Oh, no, I'm not joking. Mike's coming, please, right now. Thank you. Brendan, yeah, my cousin, Chris Murray says hello to you. Yeah, great. It was a good time, good wedding. Yep, very good. And Mr. Mike Weir, congratulations on winning the 2003 Masters Golf Tournament. Fantastic. Could I ask you just one quick question? Because I know you got your tee-off time coming up. By winning the Masters this year, how has that affected your lifestyle? And Mike Weir said to me, well, it really hasn't affected my lifestyle, but what it has done effectively, it's allowed me to compete effectively on the PGA Tour.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mike. We'll get you on your way there. Boom, boom, boom. Back. They got it. They nailed it.
And for you
Mike
being
Weir,
for you being a golf guy, that must have been a moment, right?
That was a moment in heaven.
and you got it on the radio too, right? You got it out. So
and one more thing on the golf, and this is the 25th year of the PGA Tour Partners Club. They formed in the year 2000. That year, I'm just trying to think of the pro that was the president that year. It escapes me. Oh, Fred Couples. He was
Freddie
the
Couples.
president. So what they did for the 25th anniversary, the silver anniversary, they had 12 Masters jackets. To be even considered, you might want to get in the draw. You had to be a charter member. In other words, you had to join in the year 2000. Well, back then it was $750 US to join. A lot of money.
Yeah.
It took me 2 work paychecks to pay for it, but it's been very gratifying because what they do each golf season, they send you different golf clubs, you try them out, you write reports on them, send them back. If you like that particular club, you get to keep it at quite a discount, which is not bad. That's pretty darn good. So I'm glad you're sitting down. There were 6 Canadians who won Masters jackets. There were 6 American folks who won Masters jackets. And I was one of them right across Canada. I kid you not.
You got your own green jacket.
What I've done, I gave the jacket to Cam Carter, Carter's Menswear, and they're going to be featuring it in their front window this weekend because the Masters tournament, which is the the tournament for
Yep.
forever on the PGA Tour, the most important tournament, the most recognized, the Masters. Pass on by Carter's Menswear, you'll see the Masters jacket.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. There it is, folks. Randy Halmo, the whole story of the radio and the green jacket today on Boomer Music Experience. I got to say thanks, man. Great show.
Thanks very much,
Love
Dave.
doing it
Really
with you.
enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see you next month.
You
Have a
bet,
good
Randy.
week.
Take care, bud.
Okay.